in Miami, what has hurt you the most to see it lost because of progress, because you believed it should have historical meaning to people and should have been preserved, because the money's coming for all of these things in this city. They're going to desecrate the past by not respecting that this area of our city needs to remain Art Deco.
The Deco, the Delano Hotel is not only a historic relic from the Deco era, it's also history from the 90s. It was one of the first boutique hotels in the world. It invented the boutique hotel business. The idea that you could take older and historic hotels and refurbish them in a way where you could breathe new life and people would be excited about not just staying in a new hotel, but staying in some place that had the rich history of the community in it, but still get some of the amenities you would expect from a luxury hotel. Honestly, the time had come perhaps for the Herald Building. The time had come, perhaps, for the Orange Bowl. There's progress that I can accept, that certain buildings and properties have perhaps outlived their initial usefulness. The Miami Arena, brought 2 professional sports franchises to Miami for the low price of $50 million, which is a low price when you think a new venue that's going to attract that kind of commerce and that kind of professional sports attention. I'm all for that. The lack of care and attention and restoration to the Marine Stadium is kind of devastating. It isn't gone yet, but the city of Miami hired a firm 6 years ago already to start to plan and plot the restoration of this monument, of this uniquely Miami. There's a lot of stadiums that look like the Orange Bowl around the world. There's a lot of hotels. There's a lot of arenas. There's nothing quite like the Miami Marine Stadium anywhere in the world. It is a singular, historic, beautiful structure on the water, and the fact that there's a $45 million plan that is a secret. There's like a slideshow out there that we can look at, but the city has kept it a secret, and the city has taken no action on it. I think as last year, in the middle of the pandemic, when Jessica wrote your story, it was something you said, like it was imminent that they were going to do something. Have they done a damn thing?
Right. Well, so I actually reported the story out the week of the Super Bowl in 2020 in Miami, and then we sat on it at Sports Illustrated for a while.
It was
and
the dead bird. They were like, the lawyers were haggling over the dead bird.
We can't run this because of the bird. And I was like, but it's color. You guys wanted color in the story. There's a dead carcass of a bird here.
Red is the color.
Can you imagine how cool it was just to see a dead bird? But anyways, yeah, so like we sat on the story for probably 9 or 10 months until finally it was public, maybe even longer. I can't even remember at this point. But so I called one of my contacts, Don Worth, who's one of the preservationists who lives down here in Miami, who's been working on trying to get the stadium like reimagined, rebuilt, revived over the last decade plus. And I asked if there was any update, and he said, not really. They're still waiting on, the city needs to pick a contractor and an operator for the stadium. And because of COVID now, things have just kind of taken more time and more time. So there really wasn't, after sitting on the story thinking, okay, maybe I'll have some big, update reveal at the end of it. No, like nothing had really changed.
And
in a really
no
long time.
less Miami royalty than Gloria Estefan has tried to put her star power and her name to raise awareness for this to no avail. And I think the real problem is that there is no money, or there is little money in restoration, in preserving history. The money is in knocking old shit down, redesigning, remodeling, having to go to the city, having to hire a lobbyist, having to hire architects, having to hire designers, having to redesign, having to resubmit plans, having to expedite, all of that, and having to donate to the politicians in order to get those approved, having to pay off people in the building department and code enforcement and fire. That's where the money is. The money is in knocking the old shit down and designing and building new shit. And that's the real problem here. There's no incentive to really, there's a little bit of money in it, but not enough for the politicians to actually feel like this is worth our time, because there's not enough money to steal.
Which of these three, as a historian who cares about this region and cares about history, stings the most? That the Scarface chainsaw scene hotel is now a CVS, that Van Dyke and I think the second oldest elevator in South Florida is now a Lululemon, or that Tobacco Road, I think it's our oldest bar, right? It was our oldest bar, that after 100 years it closed.
Yeah, well, I'd say Tobacco Road, first and foremost. I mean, they just did a little cocaine deal that led to the chainsaw scene in Scarface, they're selling many more dangerous drugs there now than they ever were before in Miami in the 80s with the CVS, for crying out loud. They're drug dealers in lab coats killing men, women, and children with all kinds of opiates. But honestly, when you have a place that is the oldest, we still have the oldest bar in Miami Beach, which is now the oldest bar, I think, in Dade County, which is Max Deuce. Here on 14th Street in Miami Beach.
One of the worst bars anywhere in the United States.
Whoa,
it is the best.
Shut your mouth.
The best bar. The best.
Incredible. Cash only.
The best.
Is that fake Keith Richards still by the bathroom at 3 a.m. like he has been for 4 centuries?
Part of the furniture.
But the Tobacco Road was the first liquor license, I think, in Dade County. And I got to hand it to Kush. We gave them a shout out for Stephen's Deli, which they preserved, one of the last Jewish delis, original Jewish delis from 1954, not even in Miami, in Hialeah. And Kush came and saved Tobacco Road in the best that he could, which is to say opened a place called Tobacco Road next to where Tobacco Road used to be before they knocked it down. So there are Miamians who are kind of 305 till I die people who want to help preserve some of those roots and some of that history, but it's increasingly harder because you're pushing against the tide of multi-billion-dollar bucks.
Let's get into some of the weekly news items as things get crazier and crazier. I really didn't think, Billy, I'm dead serious. I don't know how badly I underestimated all of this, but if you'd told me a few years ago Nazis in 2022 would be a thing in Orlando and DeSantis's response.
I mean, the fact that, you asked Roy what was up with the show today, and Roy's like, Nazis in 2022. It's a pretty...
Did not see that coming.
There's a sound effect for that, I think.
Why doesn't my loser game show sound work in here? I'm always pressing it.
No, press it again. One more time. Yeah, it's working.
You sound like Neil bitching about your carts.
Because he did not see that coming is not the joke I needed there. I wanted serious analysis. Man, you guys don't learn anything about this stuff. You got to be careful around all this stuff. Ask Whoopi Goldberg. You got to be careful around all of it.
We can't ask Whoopi for about 2 weeks, I think, right? Did she get suspended?
She was suspended I think she was suspended for doubling down after the apology on Colbert, parsing the semantics on
No.
it just felt silly. Anti-Semitism.
A lot of people get suspended from The View.
I didn't see. I'm sorry. Should we wait for your call, Dan?
That's your call.
I mean, that's my call. Is that? Oh, you're right.
It's a fine.
Oh, my
It's a
God.
fine. Pay
Look
up,
at
Billy.
that.
Oh yeah, I'll pay up.
You owe $5.
I apologize for that in Square Grouper.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Do me a favor. Please give that $5 to the University of Miami for once in your life.
Put it in my life wallet.
They don't need the money. So here's the thing. Nazis in 2022. This is the problem. More dangerous than the Nazis is the reason why they feel empowered now to take to the streets. For a while, these fringe psychopaths stayed in the corner of the internet and in their creepy little mom's basement meeting rooms or whatever. But the fact that they feel comfortable taking to the streets in Central Florida, waving swastikas, screaming about the Jews and worse, is the real problem. And the fact that we had bipartisan condemnation. Rick Scott, who I'm no fan of, was one of the first people to come out and call these Nazis out. But the governor of the state of Florida was unable to do it. But condemning Nazis used to be a political gimme. That was the easiest thing in the world. No one's worried about offending fucking Nazis, except for Ron DeSantis, apparently. And they're up there not only waving Nazi flags, but waving banners with the slogans of the Republican Party. Let's go Brandon. Of course, they spelled Brandon wrong because they're fucking moron Nazis. But Ron DeSantis comes out, and instead of condemning Nazis, he condemns Democrats and then demands pity for the real victim in all of this, himself, Ron DeSantis. This sort of whiny Governor Goober, white male, woe is me nonsense that somehow on Black History Month, what we need to do is apologize to Ron DeSantis for the wrongs that had been inflicted upon him. I kind of take this stuff personally. I'm Jewish, but I also am never shocked by it. We were raised with real history and real education about the plight of the Jewish people, not the biblical plight, but the real plight of the Jewish people in modern history, where an entire country's policy was to exterminate our ancestors in the previous century, in the middle of the previous century. And so we learn that real history. It doesn't make us uncomfortable, or maybe it does make us a little bit uncomfortable to learn that history, but it also ingrains in us the idea that perhaps we put it in the back of our mind. I don't fear this every day of my life, but when they come for us, which eventually they do, it's not that shocking. It's disappointing, but it's not surprising. And the idea that you might have to flee in the middle of the night with your family on a boat to some other country is always kind of there, that idea. And it's the reason why I think Jews have always been on the front line of the civil rights movement, arm in arm with our black brothers and sisters through the Jim Crow era, through the civil rights movement, and a shared love for equality, for being treated equally to everyone. The Jews have been lucky in that we can kind of camouflage ourselves, if you will, into society if we don't want to be recognized. I was born William Cohen. I was known as Billy Cohen growing up for my entire life. It was in 1990 something or other. I was working as a child actor in Los Angeles, and I was working a lot. I was moderately successful, but my agent and manager, my representation, noticed that it kept coming to a point where I was getting down to me and one other kid, and the other kid was getting it time and time again. And they were kind of looking at the odds, like, well, how do we level the playing field so that you have a better shot? And they suggested that I change my last name. So the last name Cohen, as it was originally known, is a biblical name. The Kohen were priests in the Temple of Jerusalem. And the Kohanim, who are the offspring, so to speak, who have the last name Cohen, the most common surname in Israel, by the way. So it's a very well-known Jewish name. There's like all kinds of archaic biblical rules to this day about observant Kohanim. Like, you can't marry a woman who converted, you can't marry a divorced woman, you can't enter a cemetery. There's rules around the bar mitzvah involving this. It's intensely Jewish. And I remember sitting in my mom's car crying, sobbing about just the suggestion that I change my name. I said to her, I was 13. I said, I'm not ashamed of who I am. I am proud of my father's name and my grandfather's name and his father's name. And the idea that in Hollywood, where the Jews run Hollywood, where someone would say, like, well, listen, maybe if we're casting the role of some famous, non-Jewish actor's son, we're not going to hire the Jewish kid. Even Jewish producers might have that bias. So they said, in order to level the playing field, it would be better for you to change your name. And I didn't want to do it. My mom said, who was not like a consummate stage mom, she was always kind of like, I don't really want to do this. So if you don't want to take advice from your advisors on how to do this better, then we shouldn't do this. So it's entirely up to you, but we could just go back to Miami and not, live in Los Angeles for months out of the year. And so I decided to take the expert's advice, so to speak. And I've been known as Billy Corben ever since. And what's happened through the years is that, by the way, this isn't a secret. I just said it. You can Google it. It's one of the first things that comes up, born William Cohen in Fort Myers, Florida. But what has happened is that other people that I have been in, let's say, substantive debates with in public or on Twitter have turned around and used that as a pejorative, used my last name as an epithet, anti-Semitically. And the reason is so they can point at me and say Jew. So they can pin a proverbial yellow star on me and let other people know that he is not one of us. And who has done that? Miami Commissioner Joe Carollo has done that. When I have real issues with him about the future of the city. Miami Beach Commissioner Ricky Arriola has done that, along with spreading COVID conspiracy theories and what have you. Keon Hardeman, Miami-Dade County Commissioner, has done that.
Your enemies.
Greg Cody. Greg Cody has done that. What do all of those?
You owe 4 apologies.
What do all of those people have in common? None of them are Jewish. because Jewish people wouldn't do that. Like when Donald Trump used to call Jon Stewart John Leibovitz. People can be called whatever they want to be called. But when non-Jewish people go Cohen, Jew, we know what that means. That's not an anti-Semitic dog whistle. That is a fucking foghorn, is what that is. And so I know what it is. And Jews know
It
what
needs to be shouted down by leadership and by everyone. It needs to be shouted down. It can't be something that's...
And it's also when leaders don't have material arguments to make back about your substantive debates. I say, I have proof that you were corrupt. I have proof that you were arrested for beating your wife. I have proof that you are spreading misinformation that is dangerous and deadly to people. And they come back, Jew. I say you are corrupt, you are irresponsible, you are unprofessional, you are incompetent. And they come back with Jew. So it's real. Anti-Semitism is real. I'm not a victim. I think the important thing is to amplify the awareness, is to say these people are racists, these people are anti-Semites, these people are bigots, these people are homophobes, these people are Islamophobes, whatever it may be. I think you know full well that sometimes when people move out of the bubble of Miami, they change their Hispanic surnames because they think it will be advantageous for them to get ahead in the industry of their choice.
I'm not Gonzalo. The universe's joke on me is I'm not Gonzalo or Luis because my parents didn't want me to suffer whatever indignities came with being Hispanic and being named Luis or Gonzalo. And the universe's joke is that I had to put my father Gonzalo on television with me because nobody knew I was Hispanic.
And I'm Guillermo Cohen. So how about that for the universe's joke? Guillermo Cohen over here.
Can you give us the latest on what is happening locally on rent? Because people are being priced out in a way. Rent is gone up. This in Austin, the hottest cities in America for real estate, and rent has gone up on people close to 40%, which is just appalling.
Yeah, depending on which stats you look at. It's 36 is the low end in Miami of 36%, and people are going as high as 38+%. But there is an answer, and that answer is Miami coin, Dan.
Oh,
that
come
answer
on.
is which is down 88% now. Last week it was down like 85%. Now it's down 88% from its all-time high in September. So basically, if you bought $1,000 in Miami coin in September, you now have about $120 is what you have.
A bad investment.
So that's not, don't take your investment advice from a con man, especially if he has mayor in front of his name. But speaking of con men with mayor in front of their name, that same imaginary coin salesman, Ponzi Postalita, Francis Suarez, this guy went on CBS, the local CBS affiliate last week, and they confronted him. He was at the announcement of a new luxury condominium where the cheapest unit, it's actually pretty affordable, is going to start at about $400,000, and that is a studio smaller than 500 square feet. I don't even know if it has indoor plumbing or its own bathroom. Maybe it's community bathrooms like a dormitory. But he went to the not even the groundbreaking, but the announcement of a new luxury condominium, and they said, Mayor, can we talk to you about affordable housing, about the rent being too damn high? And so he said, sure, come to my office, and they have an interview with him in which his solution for people in Miami, by the way, these are nurses, these are police officers and first responders, these are construction workers, these are hospitality and service industry workers who make the economy of Miami go round, who protect the people of this community and our economy. These are working and middle-class people, can't afford rent. What do you suggest, Mayor Suarez? He says two things. Then he mentions three things, by the way. Is there anything more annoying? The guy's like, okay, like two things, like A, and and then says B, C. Anyway, he says, one, find a cheaper apartment. Two, get a raise because your bosses are making more money because of inflation. That's what he said. Businesses are making more money because of inflation.
Wait, hold on, Billy. I'm writing this down.
And three, oh no, hang on. Three is the best one. And Dan's not going to be happy about it, but get a better paying job, he says. So those are his two things, are in fact three things, his two-pronged approach to how to deal with
but I think 2 and 3 are very similar. 2 and get a raise and get a better paying job. That sounds redundant.
What he's saying is your boss should pay you more because they're making more money from inflation. This is what he said. People are going to come at me that you're an idiot. That's no economist would ever in fact, no one with a modicum of of knowledge about the economy or inflation would ever suggest that. But this is a con man. This is a guy who's repeating things that people say to him that he doesn't understand and can't even use that data to formulate his own intelligent opinion.
You don't
on
understand that leadership is required if our skyline is changing too much. We didn't have the infrastructure for what was happening in terms of development before now. We're knocking down history right and left. A building has fallen down. What's hard to understand about rent is getting unreasonable in this market, and you're not speaking to the little people in town, the workers, the people who need to be able to afford rent when that's your attitude. Hey, pull yourself up by the bootstraps.
Again, none of this is a surprise to me. I've been telling you this guy goes to work every day for his millionaire and billionaire private clients and not his constituents in one of the poorest cities in the United States. And all of these problems, by the way, you have to remember, Francis has been in government over 12 years. He didn't just become mayor 4 years ago. He was a commissioner where he arguably had more power to sway actual policy and laws in the city of Miami. And all of these problems are old problems. We saw all of these coming for decades. Affordable housing, sea level rise, homelessness, rising rent, cost of living, infrastructure, parks, you name it. We knew that these were issues. But they did nothing about it because they thought, mañana, we have time. This is a 5, 10, 15, 20-year horizon. But then the pandemic came. Nothing new happened to any of these stressors. But what happened is that the pandemic accelerated them. They put them all in fast forward. So where they thought we'd be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, boom, we're there in 2. And so they didn't do anything about it for decades, knowing full well that we have an affordable housing crisis, knowing full well they've been talking about breaking ground on. He promised when he ran for mayor that we would break ground on several thousand new affordable housing units in his first 4 years. 0 is the number right now. 0 is the number. So politicians lie. Is that the breaking news here? Not exactly. What it is that Miami politicians have known what these problems are, and they have allowed them to metastasize to the point. So when I say this place is going to be unlivable, I mean real people are not going to be able to afford to habitate here, and they're not going to be able to habitate in any meaningful way because infrastructure, the traffic, the cost of living, all of these things will get to the point where it's just untenable.
People say you're a loon by saying that Miami's going to be unlivable in 5 years. They dismiss you as as a liberal crazy person when you doomsday like that.
I'm going to go see this new Robert Pattinson Batman movie at some point, and I'm going to say right now that Batman's parents, Bruce Wayne's parents, are going to be murdered. And people will be like, bro, you're a hater, bro. Why you got to be so negative, bro? Because I've seen this fucking movie before. I've seen this story before. I'm not hating. I'm just telling you the truth, and I'm making predictions based on all of the facts that we have and all of the history that we've seen. Batman's parents are going to die in this new movie.
What do you mean by
murdered. How many great U.S. cities have you seen sunken to the bottom of the ocean? I'm just curious.
Oh, well, we're about to see our first one.
Okay, but you haven't seen this movie.
And probably not. No, what the movie I've seen is the failure of our leaders to lead and to take any mitigating actions to make this place. Who are going to be our nurses? Who are going to be our police? Our teachers can't afford to live in the city that they're supposed to work in.
Here's a movie I've seen before. Venice. They made it work.
Define unlivable. Define it. 5 years, Miami unlivable. Define it.
First and foremost.
More New Yorkers come down?
Solid. I think the New Yorkers are going to start to leave probably at some point in those 5 years. Number one.
please, dear God.
I'm sticking around.
Please,
I don't care if
God.
I'm waist deep. You have incentivized this.
I feel like I'm more likely to drown in New Yorkers than I am in water in the next 5 years.
I'm pro sea level rise if it means the New Yorkers leave.
All right, pros, cons. We got one each. Let's go.
I feel like Mike is so resilient that I would believe that he would actually evolve like the Mariner in Waterworld and have gills behind his ear.
Our whole show is going to develop
is
that.
real. I've seen it.
Go ahead, look behind my ear
That's
and
how
see
I
it.
sound like anytime I say the U is back. The U is back. I've seen this movie before. And it's poor sequel.
I think that was a solid sequel.
It was all right. I can't wait for part 3.
It was no Cocaine Cowboys 2 Hustling with a Godmother. I'll give you that.
No, part 3. It's another reason why you should apologize to the great Ruiz.
How many
family.
apologies did you get? You got one of your. You got
look,
one of your 4 apologies.
The biggest one.
He's gonna have to apologize to Greg Cody.
Is an apology to Greg Cody.
Rest assured, one way or another, I'm certain that the Ruiz family will be in the U Part 3. I'm sure of that.
Have you ever? Can I just ask you a question? Like, have you ever said this statement? Like, I was wrong. Have you ever? Is that something that's ever left your mouth?
Yeah, all the time, in fact.
All the time?
He's married.
Yeah.
All the time.
I just, maybe, perhaps, the Ruiz family are a great giving family that have had 30-plus NIL deals approved.
I'm
by
not
the
doing this
school.
again. See you guys next week. We'll talk to you guys next
maybe
week.
you were wrong.
Billy, I insist that you put something that isn't doom and gloom in here. I insist that you find something that is positive that you want to talk about that fills your heart with hope.
Well, Miami culture is probably one of our best exports, other than, Florida fuckery and fraud. But Miami culture, I think, has had an extraordinary influence on the country and world culture and popular culture. And there is a brilliant film now on Disney Plus and I think in theaters called Encanto that's getting a lot of attention in no small part because of its ridiculously infectious songs by Lin-Manuel Miranda of Hamilton fame. But there are 3 big Miami connections to Encanto. It's probably one of the biggest movies in the world and biggest soundtracks. I think we don't talk about Bruno. It's like number 1. The soundtrack is number 1. Charisse Castro-Smith, the co-director and co-writer of Encanto, is a first-generation Cuban-American in Miami. She's a fellow graduate of New World School of the Arts High School, which is my alma mater. Go fighting pigeons.
You went there in high school with a briefcase.
I did.
As a sophomore in high school, you took a briefcase to high school.
She's younger.
I love that about you. Whittingham loves that about you.
And a monocle. I had a monocle.
I'm going to show up with a briefcase next week. This is great. I love this.
It's the only thing about Billy that's brief.
2, one of the stars of the film, Jessica Darrow, who plays Luisa Madrigal, and she sings probably my favorite song from the soundtrack, Surface Pressure, which I think is also on the Billboard Top 10 right now. She's a Cuban-American actress, born in Miami, went to Southwood Middle School and Coral Reef Senior High, and I think was in a bunch of Miami children's theater plays and musicals, Go Barracudas. And last but not least, the title song, Colombia Mi Encanto, which was written, of course, by Lin-Manuel Miranda and sung by Colombian superstar Carlos Vives, was actually recorded. Some of the instrumental tracks were recorded in Miami at the world-famous Criteria Studios, a legendary place where, James Brown, Aretha Franklin, the Bee Gees, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, Eric Clapton, the piano from the Layla piano solo is still there. I mean, it's incredibly historic and amazing place. They recorded this song with 3 Miami musicians. Grammy winner Guillermo Vadala, who played on the bass, Jean-Paul Gaol on keyboard, and Tato Marenco, a fellow Colombian, on gaita and millos, which are traditional
You're
Colombian.
Doing great, by the way.
Traditional Colombian
not only is he doing
instruments.
great,
Crushing the pronunciation.
But I
It's
feel,
like a newscaster. Anytime
I also feel like galletas he had trouble with. But I would say
Gaeta y millos.
you sound like a lead singer saying, and on the maracas, like you sound like you're pointing out the band here because you're singing this in your house
You
with
never
your
have a problem with
your
galletas,
daughter.
do you?
I love galletas.
These are Miami guys.
I'm gonna give you a galleta. Different kind of galleta. The other galleta, the one that Charles Oakley gives.
Colombian wind instrument is what it is. But nonetheless, the idea that Miami musicians and playing traditional Colombian instruments to create authentic Colombian folk music on a Disney title track, I think is pretty
with
pretty
a guy
fucking
who
cool.
with a guy in Lin-Manuel Miranda who can't make anything bad. Like he can't make anything that's not exceptional.
He's allergic.
My good friend, Lin-Manuel Miranda. I spent a fair amount of time with him over the lockdown. We got to know each other quite well.
Just singing with your daughter?
Us proud Latinos, and again, my surname is Ruiz. I'm very proud to say that. Always have been throughout my illustrious career. we hang out in some circles, and I'm very happy that you read IMDb. That was very nice of you.
See you later, Billy. We'll talk to you next week.
Cocaine's.